Charlotte Johnston woke up at 7:30 in the morning, 2 hours before her alarm clock. Her heart pounded as if she'd just finished chasing a criminal through the streets of Nashville. But today was no chases, no arrests, no night watch. Today was her wedding day. She lay in bed in her small apartment on Gallatin Road, looking at the white dress that hung on the closet door. Simple, elegant, unadorned, just the way she liked it. Adam had laughed when she'd picked it out in the store, saying that even her wedding dress she'd chosen like a policewoman, practical and comfortable. Thinking of her fiancé made her smile. Adam Johnston worked as a sales manager for a medical equipment company, and they'd met 3 years ago at the hospital when Charlotte had come to do paperwork after her partner had been injured. Adam had been helping install a new ultrasound machine at the time, and a conversation had ensued between them about how difficult it was to work in systems where human lives depended on your actions. Charlotte got out of bed and headed for the shower. The hot water ran down her shoulders, washing away the remnants of sleepiness and nervousness. She'd been on the police force for 8 years since she'd graduated from the academy at 24. She'd seen a lot of things: murders, robberies, family dramas, but she'd never imagined that the most exciting day of her life wouldn't be an operation to apprehend a particularly dangerous criminal, but her own wedding. After her shower, she sat in front of the mirror in her bedroom and began to do her hair. She decided to put her long, dark hair in an elegant bun. It would look good under the veil, and when she took it off for the photos. Her hands trembled slightly as she fastened the invisibles, and Charlotte mentally chuckled to herself. She'd been as calm as a rock in the shootouts, and here she was, worrying about her hair. At 8 in the morning, there was a knock at the door. Charlotte threw on a robe and opened it. Her best friend Keisha Brown stood on the doorstep with a big box in her hands and a big smile on her face. "Good morning, bride," Keisha exclaimed, walking into the apartment. Bringing breakfast and everything she needed to create the look of Tennessee's most beautiful police officer, Keisha worked as a beautician at a downtown beauty salon and was the only friend Charlotte had who understood her choice of profession. They had been friends since middle school, and it was Keisha who helped Charlotte through her parents' divorce, her grandfather's death, and all those difficult moments that inevitably happen in everyone's life. "You look amazing even without makeup," Keisha said as she unwrapped the box on the kitchen table. "But we'll make Adam swoon when he sees you in church." They ate breakfast, croissants, and coffee, discussing the latest preparations. The guests were to gather at the registry office by 11 in the morning. The ceremony was scheduled for 11:30. A small wedding, 30 people in all: Charlotte's parents, her grandmother, a few colleagues from the station, Adam's friends and relatives from his side of the family. "Where did Adam have his bachelor party?" Keisha asked, starting to pull out her makeup. "There was no bachelor party," Charlotte replied. "He said he didn't want to do anything stupid before the wedding. Just had dinner with the guys from work on Friday, that's all." "He's so right," Keisha smiled. "It's rare to meet a man who doesn't consider a bachelor party a ritual." Charlotte nodded, but something in her friend's words made her wonder. Indeed, Adam had become somewhat aloof in recent weeks. He was often late at work, saying they had a big project with the new clinic. Several times she'd noticed him quickly putting his phone away when she entered the room. But after all, everyone is entitled to their own personal space, especially when preparing for such an important event like a wedding. Keisha began doing her makeup, carefully applying foundation and emphasizing her eyes. They chatted about nothing, about the new TV show Keisha was watching, about honeymoon plans, about how Charlotte's life would change after the wedding. At 10:30, when her makeup was almost done, Charlotte's phone beeped with an incoming message. She glanced at the screen and frowned. The number was unfamiliar. "Who is it?" Keisha asked, noticing the change in her friend's expression. Charlotte opened the message and felt a chill go down her spine. On the screen was a picture of a young, dark-skinned woman with a clearly visible pregnant belly. The girl was smiling at the camera with her hand on her rounded belly. Under the picture was the text: "Your fiancé belongs to me. We're about to have a baby. Think about getting married to a man who's cheating on you." Charlotte's hands trembled. She reread the message several times, hoping she was imagining things, but the words were still the same, and a smiling pregnant woman was looking at her from the phone screen. "Charlotte, what's wrong?" Keisha asked worriedly. "You're all pale." Without saying a word, Charlotte handed the phone to her friend. Keisha looked at the screen and her face stretched. "What the hell is this?" she exclaimed. "Who sent this?" "I don't know," Charlotte answered hoarsely. "It's an unfamiliar number." Keisha scrutinized the picture, then looked at her friend. "Look, this is some kind of stupid joke," she said firmly, "or an attempt to ruin the wedding. It's your job to get revenge on the people you arrested." "But how did they get the number?" Charlotte asked, feeling her heart racing in her chest. Maybe they got the numbers mixed up. Charlotte wanted to believe her friend's words, but something inside her told her that it wasn't an accident. The woman in the picture looked happy and confident, as if she really knew something important. "I need to call Adam," she said, rising from her chair. "Charlotte, wait!" Keisha grabbed her arm. "You don't need to call him right now. You're agitated, you might say too much. And if it really is someone's evil joke, why ruin his mood on his wedding day?" "But I can't just ignore it," Charlotte objected. "Don't ignore it," Keisha said, "but approach it sensibly. You're a cop. You know how to analyze information. Look at the facts. An anonymous text from an unknown number, a picture of an unknown woman, no specific details that prove a connection to Adam. It's a classic attempt at psychological pressure." Charlotte took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down. Keisha was right. As a police officer, she was supposed to think logically, not give in to emotion. But her maternal instinct told her that something was wrong. Despite her friend's entreaties, she dialed Adam's number. The phone buzzed for a long time before he answered. "Hi, honey." Adam's voice sounded a little strained. "What's wrong? You know the groom isn't allowed to talk to the bride on the wedding day before the ceremony." "Adam, I got a strange message," Charlotte said, trying to speak calmly. "With a picture of some pregnant woman and text saying that you're having an affair." There was silence on the other end of the line. Charlotte waited for Adam to laugh or be indignant, but he remained silent. "Adam?" she called out. "Yes, I'm here," he finally answered. "Look, this is ridiculous. Somebody must be trying to ruin our day. You know how many psychos you get in your line of work. But how could they have gotten your name and my phone number?" "I have no idea." Adam sounded annoyed. "Charlotte, do you really think I would do something like that? The day before the wedding?" "I don't know what to think," she admitted. "Then look at me at the registry office today," Adam said more gently. "Look me in the eyes when I say my vows, and you'll realize that this anonymous letter is nonsense. I love you, Charlotte, just you." After the conversation, she put the phone down on the table and sank into a chair. Keisha put her arm around her shoulders. "So are you convinced?" she asked her friend. "He said it was bullshit right away." "Yes, but he reacted strangely," Charlotte admitted. "He didn't say anything for too long when I told him. He was just shocked," Keisha said confidently. "Any normal person would be confused by such an accusation. The important thing is that he explained the situation and assured you of his love." Charlotte nodded, but her anxiety persisted. She looked at the picture on her phone again. The woman was beautiful, young, with kind eyes and an open smile. She didn't look like a psychopath capable of evil pranks. "Maybe I should postpone the wedding?" she asked uncertainly. "Absolutely not!" Keisha exclaimed. "Charlotte, you've been preparing for this day for 6 months. All the guests are already assembled. Your parents are in from out of state. The registry office is waiting for you. You're going to let some anonymous person ruin your happiness?" My friend was right. Charlotte had spent months organizing a wedding, albeit a small one. She and Adam had picked out rings, discussed a honeymoon, planned a future together. Would she really be willing to give all that up because of one suspicious text message? "Okay," she said finally. "We'll continue with the preparations, but I'll be watching Adam closely during the ceremony. If I see even a shadow of doubt in his eyes..." "You'll see nothing but love," Keisha assured her. "Now let's finish our makeup. We still have to put on the dress, and I want to take some pictures for your wedding album." The next hour passed in a hectic pace. Keisha finished her makeup, helped her put on her dress, adjusted her veil. Charlotte looked at herself in the mirror and tried to recapture the joyful anticipation she'd felt that morning. She looked beautiful. The dress fit perfectly, the makeup emphasized her natural beauty, and the veil made her look romantic. But her thoughts kept returning to that message. Who was this woman? Why did she look so happy? And most importantly, where did she get her information about Adam? "Stop thinking about it," Keisha said, as if she'd read her mind. "This is your day, and nothing can ruin it." At 11:30, they drove to the registry office. Charlotte sat in the passenger seat, nervously fiddling with her bouquet of white roses. Outside the window were the familiar streets of Nashville, the city where she'd been born, raised, and chosen her profession. It was where she'd met Adam, where they planned to move on with their lives and perhaps raise children. The thought of children reminded her again of the pregnant woman in the picture. What if it was true? What if Adam really did have a mistress who was expecting a child with him? How would she be able to look him in the eye during the ceremony without knowing for sure? The Church Street Registry office looked solemn in the morning sunlight. The white columns and wide steps leading up to the main entrance gave an air of importance to the moment. Charlotte got out of Keisha's car and paused for a moment, looking at the familiar building. How many times had she been here for work, filing paperwork, accompanying witnesses, participating in investigations? But today she'd come here as a bride. "You ready to go?" Keisha asked, adjusting Charlotte's veil. "As ready as I can be," she answered, trying to keep her hands from trembling. The first people Charlotte saw were her parents, Robert and Gloria Wilson. Her father was dressed in a new dark blue suit he and her mother had bought for the occasion, and her mother in an elegant burgundy dress and jacket. They arrived from Memphis as early as yesterday and are staying at a small hotel near the property. "My beauty!" Gloria exclaimed, hugging her daughter carefully so as not to mess up her hair. "You look absolutely marvelous." Robert Wilson was a man of few words, but his eyes shone with pride as he looked at his daughter. He had worked as a railroad mechanic for 30 years and always said his greatest accomplishment was raising a daughter who became a police officer. "Adam's a lucky man," he said as he kissed Charlotte on the cheek. Not a bad guy himself, though. Standing next to her parents was Charlotte's grandmother, 80-year-old Estelle Wilson. Despite her age, she looked cheerful and kept a straight face. She wore a purple dress with a lace collar and a small hat with a veil, an outfit she kept for special occasions. "Baby," grandmother said, taking Charlotte's hands, "today is the most important day of your life. Remember that every second of the day." Charlotte nodded, feeling tears come to her eyes. Her grandmother had always been a special person to her, wise, kind, understanding. It was Grandma Estelle who had supported her decision to become a policewoman when her parents had doubted the right choice for the girl. Gradually, other guests approached. Charlotte saw her colleagues from the station. They came almost as a group. Police work creates a special bond between people, and colleagues become a second family. Today, many of them were in dress uniform, which made the ceremony especially solemn. Captain Regina Foster was one of the first to approach Charlotte. A tall, slender woman of 48, she had been in charge of the East Nashville precinct for 10 years and had earned the respect of all her subordinates. She wore a dress uniform with many awards and decorations. "Officer Wilson," the captain said with a smile, "you look even better today than you did in uniform." "And that wasn't easy." "Thank you, Captain," Charlotte replied. "I'm so glad you could make it." "How could I miss the wedding of one of my precinct's finest officers?" Regina gave her a motherly hug. "I wish you and Adam many years of wedded bliss. And remember, if you need help with scheduling after the honeymoon, don't hesitate to ask." Standing next to the captain were Sergeant Tyler Clark and Officer Janet Lewis, colleagues with whom Charlotte had worked the same shifts. Tyler was a veteran of the precinct, a 45-year-old man with graying temples and a kind look. Janet was a young officer who had joined the police force only 2 years ago, and Charlotte often helped her with advice. "You're absolutely radiant," Janet said, admiring the dress. "That Adam has no idea what kind of wife he's got." "He does," Tyler laughed. "Otherwise, he wouldn't have married a policewoman. It takes a lot of courage." Charlotte smiled as she felt the tension fade. The warm words of her colleagues and the sincere joy in their eyes helped her to forget about that unfortunate message. Maybe Keisha was right and it really was someone's evil joke. Officer Derek Williams, Charlotte's patrol partner, approached the group. A 29-year-old man of average height, with an athletic build and attentive brown eyes. They'd been working as a pair for 2 years now, and in that time, they'd developed not only a professional, but also a friendly relationship. Derek was the man Charlotte trusted with her life during dangerous operations. "Charlotte," he said, smiling broadly, "you look like a princess. Adam is the luckiest man in Tennessee." He hugged her tightly, and Charlotte felt the familiar sense of security she had always felt around her partner. Derek was single, saying that police work didn't leave time for serious relationships, but he'd always supported Charlotte in her affair with Adam. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Your presence is very important to me." "I can't help it," Derek replied. "We're a team, and a team should support each other not only at work, but also in life." Gradually, Adam's friends gathered, his co-workers, a few classmates, a cousin from Memphis. Charlotte didn't know them very well, but she always tried to be polite and friendly. Adam was a more reserved person than she was. He had fewer close friends, but those who knew him said only good things about him. Finally, the groom himself appeared. Adam looked elegant in a dark gray suit with a white shirt and silver tie. His hair was neatly styled and a nervous smile played across his face. He walked over to Charlotte and took her hand. "You're beautiful," he whispered, kissing her cheek. "Just dazzling." "You look very good too," she replied, looking him carefully in the eye. She saw nothing suspicious in his gaze, just love, excitement, and the slight nervousness that was natural for a groom on his wedding day. Maybe she really was worrying about that message for nothing? "How's it going?" Adam asked quietly. "You haven't called since our conversation this morning." "I'm fine," Charlotte replied. "Keisha convinced me that it was someone's stupid joke." "Of course it was a stupid joke," Adam agreed, but something in his voice struck her as odd. "The important thing is that you didn't let it ruin our day." The registry clerk announced that the ceremony would begin in 10 minutes and asked everyone to proceed into the hall. The guests began to move slowly toward the entrance, discussing the upcoming ceremony and sharing their impressions. Grandma Estelle walked over to Charlotte and took her under her arm. "Baby," she said solemnly, "before you enter this hall as a bride, I want to say a few words to you." All present fell silent, sensing the importance of the moment. Grandmother Estelle was the patriarch of the family, and her words always carried special weight. "I have lived 80 years, the old lady began, "and I have seen many weddings, many families. Some marriages have been happy, others not so happy. But I realized one important thing. A strong marriage is built not on passion, not on beautiful words, but on trust, respect, and the ability to forgive each other." She looked first at Charlotte, then at Adam. "Charlotte, you've chosen a difficult profession. Police work demands a lot from a man, and not every man is willing to share that responsibility with his wife. Adam, you have to realize that your wife risks her life every day serving people. That makes her special, and you must appreciate that." Adam nodded, listening intently. "And you, baby," Grandmother turned to Charlotte, "remember that work should not replace family. Yes, service is important, but the husband and children you hopefully will have should know that they are important to you too." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. Her grandmother's words had touched her to the core, but the mention of children made her think of that message again. What if Adam did have a child, but not with her? "Family is sacred," Grandma Estelle continued. "It's a place where you can be yourself, where you are loved and accepted for who you are. Take care of each other, be honest, and then your marriage will be a fortress that no storm can destroy." She hugged first Charlotte, then Adam. "Now go and become husband and wife," she said with a smile. "I will pray for your happiness." Everyone present applauded, and some of the guests wiped away their tears too. Grandmother's speech was heartfelt and wise. It set everyone in a solemn mood. The guests began to enter the ceremony hall. It was a spacious room with high ceilings, decorated with flowers and white ribbons. Rows of chairs were arranged in a semicircle, and in the center stood the table where the registrar would be seated. Charlotte stood in the small hallway next to the room, waiting for her turn to enter. Her heart was beating so fast, she was afraid everyone would hear it pounding. Keisha adjusted her veil and bouquet one last time. "Everything is going to be perfect," her friend whispered. "You're the most beautiful bride I've ever seen." Adam had already made his way into the hall and was waiting for her at the registrar's table. The music played the wedding march, and that was the signal for Charlotte to enter. She took a deep breath and stepped into the hall. All the guests turned to her, and she could see the admiration and joy on their faces. Her parents smiled through their tears. Her work colleagues nodded approvingly. Her grandmother crossed herself and whispered a prayer. Charlotte walked slowly down the aisle between the rows, trying to memorize every face, every smile. This was her day, the day she had dreamed of since childhood. Ahead of her waited Adam, who was to be her husband. But as she reached the middle of the aisle, her gaze fell on a woman who stood in the last row against the very wall. Young, beautiful, dark-skinned, with a visibly rounded pregnant belly. Exactly the same woman whose picture she'd seen in that damning message that morning. It was as if time had stopped. Charlotte froze in place, unable to take a step. The woman was looking straight at her, and there was no malice or mockery in her eyes, only sadness and determination. "Charlotte?" Adam called out worriedly. "What's wrong?" The music continued to play, and the guests looked at each other puzzled, not understanding why the bride had stopped in the middle of the aisle. Some began to turn around, trying to figure out what had caught her attention. Keisha quickly approached her friend. "Charlotte, what's wrong?" she whispered. "She's here," Charlotte said barely audibly, keeping her eyes on the pregnant woman. "The woman in the picture. She's here, in the hall." Keisha followed the direction of her gaze and saw the pregnant woman against the wall. Her friend's face turned pale. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's..." "Exactly," Charlotte confirmed. "It's her." The pregnant woman stepped forward, and Charlotte saw that she was wearing a simple but elegant blue maternity dress. Her hair was neatly styled, her makeup flawless. She didn't look like a crazy person determined to disrupt someone else's wedding, but like a confident woman who had come for a very important matter. The guests were beginning to notice the tension. Charlotte's parents looked anxious. Fellow police officers instinctively tensed, sensing something was going wrong. Captain Foster rose from her seat, ready to intervene if need be. "Charlotte, let's get on with the ceremony," Adam said louder, and you could hear the obvious panic in his voice. "Whatever happens, we'll deal with it later." But Charlotte couldn't budge. She looked at the pregnant woman and realized that this morning's message had not been a prank. This woman really did know something about her fiancé, and that something was so important that she had dared to come to someone else's wedding. The music stopped. A heavy silence hung in the hall, broken only by the ticking of the large wall clock. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. The pregnant woman slowly walked forward, between the rows of chairs, heading down the aisle. Her footsteps on the marble floor sounded clear and determined. She wasn't in a hurry, but she didn't hesitate either. She walked like a person who knows exactly what she must do. The silence in the hall was deafening. Charlotte stood in the middle of the aisle in her white dress, clutching the bouquet with trembling hands, and looked at the pregnant woman who was slowly approaching the altar. Each step the stranger took on the marble floor echoed in the tense silence. "Adam?" Charlotte's voice sounded hoarse, but loud enough to be heard by everyone present. "Who is that woman?" Adam turned pale, his hands nervously tugging at the edge of his jacket. He stared at the approaching pregnant woman with the expression of a man who sees disaster approaching and can do nothing to stop it. "Yeah, I don't know," he mumbled, but his voice shook, giving away the lie. "She must have gotten the wrong address, or—" "Don't lie to me," Charlotte interrupted him sharply, and there was a metallic note in her voice that every criminal who had ever dealt with Officer Wilson knew. "This is the same woman whose picture was sent to me this morning." The guests began to glance around, sensing the tension building. Charlotte's parents looked confused and frightened. The fellow police officers instinctively tensed up. Their trained eyes immediately noticed that the situation was getting out of control. Captain Foster rose slowly from her seat, ready to intervene. Derek Williams stood up as well, his hand instinctively reaching for his belt where the holster of his service weapon hung. As an experienced police officer, he could sense danger in the air. "Charlotte, please," Adam said pleadingly, taking a step toward her. "Let's not make a scene. Whatever is going on, we can discuss it privately later." "Don't you dare come near me!" Charlotte shouted, stepping back. "I want to know the truth, right now! Who is this woman and what is she doing at my wedding?" The pregnant woman finally reached the first row of chairs and stopped. Now everyone could see her face, young, determined, with sad but firm eyes. She put her hand on her rounded belly, and took a deep breath. "My name is Amara Gray," she said in a clear, ringing voice that everyone in the room could hear. "And I came here because I can't keep quiet anymore." "Who are you?" Charlotte demanded an answer, though in her heart she knew what she was about to hear. Amara looked first at her, then at Adam, who stood as if struck by lightning. "I am Adam Johnston's mistress," she said calmly, "and I'm expecting a child with him." The words sounded like a gunshot. Several of the women in the hall gasped. The men froze in tense anticipation. Grandmother Estelle clutched at her heart, and Charlotte's mother covered her face with her hands. "No!" Adam shouted. "It's not true! I don't know that woman!" "Adam," Amara said reproachfully, turning to him, "will you lie even now, after everything that has happened between us?" "I am telling the truth," he objected desperately. "I have never seen you before." Amara shook her head sadly and pulled her cell phone out of her purse. "Then explain this," she said, showing the screen. Even from a distance, Charlotte could see that there were pictures on the screen, Adam and Amara together, hugging, laughing. One of the pictures showed him kissing her, another showed them sitting in a restaurant at a table for two. It's a fake," Adam shouted, but his voice sounded less and less convincing. "Modern technology allows—" "Adam, stop it," Amara said quietly. "Do you remember last Thursday night? You said you were working late, but you were actually with me. We had dinner at that Italian place on Music Row where you always order carbonara pasta. Then we were walking along the waterfront and you were saying that things would change soon, that you'd find a way to be with me and our baby." Adam turned even paler. The details Amara had named were too concrete to be fiction. "And on Sunday," she continued, "when you told Charlotte you were going to play basketball with your friends, you were actually at my house. We were picking out a name for the baby. You said that if it was a boy, you wanted to name him Marcus, after your grandfather." Charlotte felt the world crumbling around her. All these details, all these particulars, they rang true. And worst of all, she remembered that Thursday when Adam had actually stayed late at work, and that Sunday when he had gone to play basketball. "Adam," she said slowly, and there was a deadly stillness in her voice that was more frightening than any scream. "Look me in the eye and tell me the truth. Is this your baby?" Adam stood, opening and closing his mouth like a fish thrown ashore. His gaze darted between Charlotte and Amara. He tried to find the words that would make things right, but no such words existed. It wasn't what you think," he finally said. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" Charlotte interjected, a dangerous note in her voice. "A mistake that had lasted months? A mistake that got this woman pregnant?" "Charlotte, please listen to me," Adam said pleadingly, holding out his hands to her. "Yes, I know, Amara. Yes, there was something between us. But it doesn't mean anything. I love you. I want to be with you. You want to be with me?" Charlotte interjected, and her voice became very quiet. "While your mistress is carrying your child?" "It's not my baby!" Adam shouted in desperation. "She's lying!" "Enough," Amara said sharply. "Adam, I have the results of the DNA test. The baby is yours and you know it." She reached into her purse again and pulled out several sheets of paper. "These are the results of the test done on the sample you gave voluntarily a month ago," she said, showing the papers. "The probability of paternity is 99.9%. Adam covered his face with his hands. The game was over. All the cards were revealed. He couldn't lie anymore, couldn't deny the obvious. "My God," Charlotte whispered. "All this time, all these months you've lied to me, cheated on me, planned to marry me, knowing you had a pregnant mistress." She looked at him with an expression that made Adam instinctively step back. There was a fire burning in the eyes of the woman he was about to take as his wife that frightened him more than any weapon. "I can explain," he murmured. "It's a complicated situation, but we can work it out." "Solve it?" Charlotte interjected, her voice turning metallic. "How are you going to solve the fact that you lied to me? That you planned to marry me while hiding the fact that you were having a child with another woman?" The guests in the room sat as if mesmerized, watching the drama unfold. No one moved, no one uttered a sound. Even the children, who were among the invitees, sensed the tension and sat quietly. "Charlotte, you have to understand," Adam began, taking another step toward her. I didn't plan for things to turn out this way. Amara, it was just a fling, nothing serious. And when she told me she was pregnant, I didn't know what to do." "A fling?" Amara repeated, pain in her voice. "Adam, you said you loved me, that you wanted to be with me and our child. You promised to break the engagement." "I never promised that," Adam objected. "You misunderstood." "Misunderstood?" Amara pulled out her phone and turned on an audio recording. "Then listen to this." Adam's voice came from the speaker of the phone. "I can't live like this anymore, Amara. The constant lying, the hiding, especially now that you're carrying my baby. I have to tell Charlotte the truth and call off the wedding. We will be together as a real family." The silence in the hall became absolute. Even the sound of breathing seemed too loud. Adam stood as if struck by thunder, and Charlotte looked at him with an expression of utter disgust. "Were you recording our conversations?" he whispered. "I had to," Amara replied. "You kept changing your promises, and I was afraid you'd change your mind again." Charlotte slowly approached Adam. The bouquet fell out of her hands and onto the floor, the white roses scattering across the marble slabs. "So you were going to leave me," she said quietly. "But you got cold feet at the last moment and decided to marry me, hiding the truth. What did you plan to do next, Adam? Live with 2 families? Visit your child in secret from your wife?" "No, I wanted to work things out," Adam babbled. "Find some way out." "What kind of a way out?" Charlotte's voice grew louder and louder. "You lied to both of us. Me by hiding the fact that you had a mistress. Her by promising to leave me, but not doing so." She turned to the guests, and everyone could see that her face was contorted with rage. "Did you hear that?" she shouted. "Did everyone hear? That man was going to marry me, knowing that his mistress was pregnant by him." Derek Williams stood up from his seat and began to slowly approach Charlotte. As an experienced police officer, he sensed that the situation could become dangerous. The rage in his partner's eyes was so intense that he feared for her mental state. "Charlotte," he said quietly, "let's get out of here. Let's talk in the fresh air." "No," she replied sharply, keeping her eyes on Adam. "We'll end this here and now, in front of all these people who have come to see our wedding." She turned to the groom again. "Do you know what the most disgusting thing about this situation is?" she said, and her voice became almost calm, which was even scarier than screaming. "Not that you cheated on me, not that you were going to have a child with another woman. It was that you were going to marry me knowing all that. You were willing to take loyalty oaths, knowing they were lies." "Charlotte, please," Adam pleaded. "I love you. Nothing else matters. Doesn't matter?" she interjected, a dangerous note in her voice. "Your baby doesn't matter? Your lies don't matter? My feelings don't matter?" The rage that had been building up in her since morning finally burst through. All the humiliation, all the pain of betrayal, all the shame in front of her friends and co-workers. It all merged into one white-hot fire of hatred. Charlotte turned sharply to Derek, who was standing a few feet away from her. Before he could realize what was happening, she grabbed her service pistol from its holster. "Charlotte!" Derek shouted, rushing toward her. "Stop!" But it was too late. She had already pointed the gun at Adam, who stood frozen with horror. "You wanted to marry me?" she hissed. "Then get a wedding present!" The shot rang deafeningly in the confined space of the hall. Adam fell backward, clutching his chest where blood rushed from. The screams and yells of the guests filled the room. Women squealed, men jumped from their seats, children cried out in fright. "Everybody on the floor!" shouted Captain Foster in a commanding voice. "Nobody move!" The fellow policemen instinctively drew their guns, but were confused. They couldn't shoot their colleague. Derek rushed towards Charlotte, trying to take the gun away from her. "Charlotte!" he shouted. "Put the gun down, now!" But she could no longer hear him. There was a mad gleam in her eyes as she stared at the bleeding Adam and felt a strange satisfaction. He was getting what he deserved. "Call an ambulance!" shouted one of the guests. "Hurry!" Amara stood over the fallen Adam, pressing her hands to her stomach and sobbing. She hadn't expected this turn of events either. Suddenly, Charlotte realized what she'd done. The rage faded, and horror and despair took its place. She had killed a man. Killed in front of co-workers, friends, parents, killed on her own wedding day. Without a word, she threw the gun to the floor and ran for the exit. Her wedding dress fluttered behind her. Her veil snapped off and fell somewhere in the aisle between the rows. "Stop her!" shouted Captain Foster. Derek and several other officers rushed in pursuit, but Charlotte was fast. She ran out of the courthouse and saw her car parked nearby. The keys were in the purse she had abandoned in the hall, but she remembered that she always kept a spare key in a magnetic box under the bumper. She found the key and started the engine just as the cops came running out of the building. Derek was first. He was yelling something, waving his arms, but she wasn't listening. Charlotte stepped on the gas and sped off. In the rearview mirror, she saw her colleagues running to their cars. The chase was on. She raced through the streets of Nashville, unable to see the road. The white wedding dress made it hard to drive properly, but she didn't notice the inconvenience. There was only one thought in her head: to get as far away as possible, to hide, to forget everything that had happened. The sirens of police cars howled behind them. Derek and the other officers were chasing her, but no one fired. She was their co-worker, their friend. Even now, after what she'd done, they couldn't hurt her. "Charlotte!" yelled Derek into the radio. "Stop! We're going to help you! A lawyer! Treatment! We'll fix it!" But she wasn't listening. The bridge over the Cumberland River loomed ahead. If she could make it to the other side, she might have a chance to escape. Derek, however, knew her best. He anticipated her route and went to overtake her on the parallel street. His car jumped out in front of her at the intersection just as she was approaching the bridge. Charlotte tried to swerve, but it was too late. Derek's car slammed into her car from the side, and both vehicles spun on the rain-wet pavement. The impact was hard, but not fatal. Charlotte's car flipped over and came to a stop on its side. She dangled in her seatbelt, feeling blood trickling down her face from a small cut on her forehead. Derek got out of his car and ran up to her. Other police officers surrounded the scene of the accident. "Charlotte," he said, peering through the broken window. "It's over. Get out of the car." She looked at him, at her partner, the one she'd worked with for 2 years, the one who'd trusted her with his life, and she'd stolen his gun and killed a man. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to. I didn't think." "I know," Derek replied quietly. "I know, Charlotte, but it doesn't matter now." He helped her out of the car and gently sat her down on the curb. She sat there in her tattered and dirty wedding dress, blood dripping from her face onto the white fabric. Captain Foster walked over to them and, with a heavy sigh, pulled out her handcuffs. "Charlotte Wilson," she said formally, "you are under arrest on the charge of murder. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law." The click of the handcuffs sounded like a sentence. Charlotte didn't resist. She sat motionless, looking at her hands in metal bracelets. Until an hour ago, those hands would have been wearing a wedding ring. Now they were wearing handcuffs. An ambulance pulled up to check on her condition after the accident. The doctors looked at the cuts and bruises, but there were no serious injuries. But the mental wounds were fatal. As they put her in the police car, Charlotte took one last look back at the registry office. Adam was being carried out of there on a stretcher. He was alive, but badly wounded. Amara was walking beside the stretcher, holding onto her pregnant belly and crying. "Is he going to make it?" Charlotte asked Derek. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "The bullet hit him in the chest, near his heart. The doctors are fighting for his life." The police car pulled away, taking Charlotte away from the ruins of her life. In the rearview mirror, she watched the building where she was supposed to be a wife and became a murderer slowly disappear. Her career in the police force was over. The life she had spent years building was shattered. Ahead was trial, prison, years behind bars, all because of a single shot fired in a fit of rage and desperation. The day that should have been the happiest of her life had been the worst, and now she had to live with it for the rest of her life.